Today's phenomenal interview is with Mario Lancioni. Mario is a great guy who's had a lot of success in a pretty short amount of time. And him and his brother and his team, they focus primarily on doing the BRRRR method, and they've grown their portfolio to about 110 properties, which is quite incredible to think that they only bought their first property in 2015. So he also has a property management company. So we talk a lot about screening tenants, finding the best way to get tenants in and to protect yourself, along with some other contracting tips and how to deal with contractors. So, man, it was such a fun interview today. I really enjoyed it and shared a wealth of knowledge. So stick around for every last bit of that and soak in all that knowledge. As always, like and subscribe on Wrestling with Real Estate, the YouTube channel. Go to the WWRE Podcast and give me a 5-star rating and write me a review if you think it's worthy, and I'm sure this one is. And I'm looking to speak to as many of you as possible. If you're interested in real estate, I'd love to get to know you, see if there's any way whatsoever I can help you. So sign up in the link in the description down below, or go to wrestlingwithrealestate.com and sign up there, and we can hop up on a call and see if there's any way I can help you. But before all that, make sure you check out all of today's interview. It really is a good one with Mario. Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multi-family real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now we have Mario Lancioni with us. How are you doing, Mario?
Doing great, Barry. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm excited for this interview. Yeah, we're talking a little bit beforehand, and man, you've got a wealth of knowledge and experience to kind of share with us. So I'm excited about all that. But before we kind of jump into the conversation, do you want to give us an idea about what your background is, what you've been up to, and what you're up to right now?
Absolutely, yeah. So I could start with the beginning. So like, I guess for all your listeners, if they're really new in the real estate business, I have grown up with a single mom. I can tell you a little bit about my background. So growing up as a child, I had a single mom who took care of me, my entire life. So I never had a father figure, a role model who really never taught me anything about business in general or anything, business related. So, as I matured, I played basketball in college and really like self-taught myself how to play basketball. And I eventually, went on, played basketball in college, had a very successful career, and really didn't know what I wanted to do with myself outside of playing basketball. So I decided to get into corporate sales, did that. And I did a pretty good job as a corporate salesperson for about 10 years. And about 7 years in, I started getting worn down by the corporate structure and understanding really that, everything you put in 40 hours, they give you a paycheck. And there was nothing that I could take with that. It was really just like my time exchange for a service, and they would pay me back for that. So I looked into real estate around like 2015, and I bought my first rental property with my brother, Santini. And it was a triplex, and we saw that there was actually cash flow. So we put it was a FHA loan that we got, was 3.5% down. And I think we cash flowed to this day about like 1,100 hours a month. Okay. And it was powerful just seeing 1,100 hours coming in positive every month, not really doing anything, just collecting rent. So that was a really big thing for us to say, we need to transition whatever we're saving or making into real estate. So that's really how, like, from the past to fast forward now, we're over 100 plus properties just by really implementing the BRRRR strategy. And it was done fairly recently. Like in 2018 was when we accidentally figured out what the BRRRR was. So we didn't know, like, now, the BRRRR is huge. Everyone knows about it, XYZ, but then we kind of stumbled on it. We actually thought we created it. I think we were like, oh my God, this is crazy. Like, we got this property for free, Mm-hmm. And then we started fine tuning like our process and understanding how to just keep pumping out free homes. And we just scaled like crazy. In 2017, I wrote a note. I remember in one of my planners, I put a goal for 2018 was to have 4 rental properties. And in 2018, that was just my goal, 4, because that's how small I thought. I didn't know about the BRRRR. And like I said, we stumbled on the BRRRR in like 2018. And I think we probably did over 40 homes in just 2018. It was insane. Because we were able to use a warehouse lender essentially who was able to in 30 days. So basically, they have a seasoning period of 30 days. So after 30 days, you can refinance the property. So I was looking at the HUD documents where you originally buy the home, and then when you refinance it, you have another HUD document. We were turning homes in like 45 days, all the way up to COVID. So we were just blowing through homes. It was unbelievable. So we really became experts on the BRRRR from like 2018 through now. With COVID, it's been a little different where their seasoning period has tightened, where they really want to make sure they have enough rent in the bank as well as like 6 months now. So the seasoning period has been stretched out. So you can't BRRRR as quickly as we did before. So the scaling process, I think, for everybody across the United States is probably slowed down doing those type of strategies.
What is a warehouse lender? What does that mean?
So I guess when I talk to them, they call it a warehouse lender, where I guess it's a bunch of like VCs or venture capitalists that they have loans that are technically not reported. Like when they run your credit, they don't show up on it. It's like through private money or lenders. So they call them, I guess, in the industry, warehouse lenders. So they're willing to basically mortgage your loan, and it's not shown on your credit report or anything like that.
Wow, and there's probably a lot less hoops to jump through and restriction, right? It's not like you have to, once you get to 10 loans, you're done kind of thing.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's really predicated on when I remember when we started. Let me think back how they gauged us. I guess it wasn't a lot of hoops like FHA. I mean, that was a bear. I remember the FHA versus going with the warehouse lender. It was, how was our credit score? Did we have an LLC set up? And then did we have maybe proof of like, I don't know, maybe $5,000-$10,000 in that business account? But that's all the criteria was to be able to refinance out. So it wasn't bad. And then I guess as you build a relationship and you do like 2 to 3 homes, they kind of like put you in like a different bracket or tier system where they just say, all right, Mario's doing it. It's pretty good. And they kind of like extend their credit line to you from like, I think it started out where they gave us $1 million in loans, and then they bumped us to like 2 million.
That's incredible. So what kind of terms are they giving you on those loans?
So the terms aren't, to me, the best, but they were able to rotate our money quickly. Mm-hmm. So if they were going to reposition our money back to us within, say, 45 days, it was between, I think at the time, we were getting beat up. I mean, 7 to like 9%. Mm-hmm. As we proved ourselves, they came down from like 9 to, I think, around 5 to 7. And then I think they would charge us points on the front, like 2 points, I think, 2 or 2.5 points. And they started removing that as we kept scaling, because they wanted to keep us as, a major part of their portfolio,
yeah, of course. Yeah, if you guys are performing, right, and paying on time and everything like that, they want to keep you guys happy as well. Was it like 30-year? What was it amortized over 30-year?
Yeah, we did everything 30-year AM schedules. The more I like, actually with COVID, when it slowed down, it allowed me to really rethink all our loans and start paying down loans, because carrying a lot of debt, sometimes you look at it, does it make sense to carry all this debt? So I agree. I would have probably looked at maybe 15-year loans moving forward now, or even just paying down some of these properties and just getting free and clear. Doing some flips. I'm trying to reposition some money to just have no mortgage on some properties, just because it makes sense, So sometimes actually having so many homes doesn't really necessarily mean that you're making a lot of money. Sometimes having less homes, you can make more money than people with 100+ homes. You really can. Yeah,
it's not always about unit count, right? It's more about cash flow more than
anything. That's what it all comes down to and boils down to. So you're right. Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. And then the reason you're trying to pay these down and you'll do a 15-year more is just so you're not as leveraged, so you're not as at risk. What is the thinking behind that?
I think that the thinking behind it is I like to have the cash flow would obviously be much higher, and also I can almost use it as like a HELOC loan where you can borrow from it and it'll be just interest only. So that would be like a strategy I'd like to do, really, by just paying down loans, just having more cash flow, and just having a home free and clear, and there's no interest. Because if you actually dive into an amortization schedule, the amount of interest the bank is making on you is ungodly. So like, that's why with COVID, I had a lot of time to look at the loans, and I'm like, oh my goodness, like they are this is why the bank is the bank, you know?
Bank is like the casinos, right? They always win,
Oh,
right?
yeah, yeah. You know about that living in Vegas. Yeah, they're like the casino.
The house always
They
wins,
always,
right? Yeah, you always,
the house always
ultimately you
wins.
want to be the bank if you can, right? That's like
Yeah,
the dream thing.
totally.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
totally.
you must be, but you guys must be, if you guys are paying, and especially initially 7 to 9%, you guys must be finding killer deals to be then able to refinance, take all your money out, and still cash flow with a 9% interest rate.
So you're right. They were some killer deals, but they were actually bad deals that we bought too. So it's not a pretty picture on every deal, you know? So it's funny because we've actually took a lot of the rentals because the market's on fire right now. So my girlfriend and soon to be wife, she's actually the head of my property management company. We have 2 employees that work underneath of her, but she's a wizard at numbers. So she's like looking at some of my homes and she's like, Mario, you're an idiot. Like, why did you buy this house? I'm like, Andrea, I bought this house 3 years ago. I didn't know real estate like I do now, you know? So she's like, the lease is coming up. Why don't you, since the market's on fire, sell this thing? So we've actually been repositioning a lot of the bad 9% loans, like you referenced, that it just doesn't cash flow. When you look at the numbers, you may be breaking even or losing money. So we're like, you know what, it's time to offload it. So I've offloaded a lot of homes actually in my portfolio, just because the cash flow didn't make sense and the equity, which is there, is great to cash in and just kind of either sit it on the sidelines, or if I find a phenomenal deal, I'll reposition the money. So some of the 9% loans don't make sense. The 9% loan it does is a duplex I have. So it's all based on like me revisiting the loans and do they make sense or not. Especially when you scale, sometimes it might be a negative thing because you're not really, I guess for us, it was like, I don't know if it was an alpha or an ego contest at the time where we're like, we just want to have 1 million homes. And then when you think about it, it doesn't really mean anything. It's about, like we talked about, cash flow. So we're dialing it back and making sure they make sense first and foremost, instead of just buying it to buy it. And that's what I think we did in the beginning.
But I'm sure, yeah, I'm sure it definitely makes sense to scale back and to find properties that cash flow. But to some extent as well, when you grow as much as you have, right, you have to be in acquisition mode, right? You have to be in that mode of, right, yes, we'll buy, yes, we're going to, like, you don't have time too much to think about everything, right? To be like, okay, what am I paying in interest rate? What does this look like? What is it like? You know, you just have to be like a bull almost, I feel like, to have that growth that you guys had.
Yeah, and I think at the time it was we knew how to do the BRRRR so well. We knew how to make sure the refi numbers lined up. We did a lot of homework on the front end, so we would be able to analyze a deal, find great deals, and then we started getting term sheets. So we were able to use the warehouse lender essentially to give us a term sheet on the front end. So they were giving us, like, we were telling them, all right, this property we're buying for 50,000. The ARV is going to be 150. What will we get back? And they would tell us, you know, Mario, based on all the data you gave us, you would get back $95,000. Your monthly loan payment would be, say, $1,100, and your interest rate would be, say, 8%. Mm-hmm. So we just kind of plugged in the numbers. We went backwards. We're like, the house is 50,000. Can we fit the $46,000 renovation budget to make this a free home? That's what we called it. We didn't say BRRRR. We just said, could this home be free? You know. So when we really nailed down the renovation and we knew all the numbers, we were able to scale that way. So we're like, all right, this is great. And then we were like, we can get $1,500 a month, but in hindsight, $1,500 a month with a loan, say like $1,200, $1,100, you're probably not cash flowing because you got to think about property management, you know, getting the place, you know, there's going to be service calls. So there's various things that can chunk into your profit. So like, that's what I said. We rebalanced out our portfolio because some homes they don't make sense.
Yeah. And going back to that first deal, man, you got my attention with that first deal because to buy, it was a triplex, right? You guys bought a triplex with a FHA loan.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So did you guys? Did you find that on the MLS? Well, how did you get or was it just that time that there was really good deals all around?
Yeah. So my brother Santini, he actually has a nose for finding really good deals, and he found the triplex. I think it was an okay deal. Mm-hmm. Even looking at it today, because we put about like $80,000 in cash to renovate the thing. Yeah. I think we were just more fixated on we can get an FHA loan, and then we want to just renovate it, and we didn't know any better, so we just did granite countertops, tile floors, tile bathrooms. So we went, it was our first investment property. And usually, people do that. They go crazy.
Yeah.
So we were so emotionally wound up our first, I think, 5 to 10 rental properties that we started saying, all right, we can't overspend. It's a rental property. People are going to ding this thing up. So we started tweaking our materials. As you learn that as you have experience. But so we overspent. I think now it's probably the equity probably outweighs the loan and all. But I think at the time, the amount of money we put into it and the loan, we were probably upside down, to be honest with you, because we put so much money into it that we were blind to construction costs, material costs. So we just unloaded all this capital because we worked full time and we're just like, oh, this is something we love and we want to do, but it was cool. So we FHA'd it, and my brother FHA'd that. And then the second property, I FHA'd a duplex because I think you're allowed I don't know if the rules have changed, but back then you were able to get 2 FHA loans in your lifetime. I think that's how they coined the phrase to me. So we both use our FHAs on triplex, duplex, my brother, and I use a duplex and then 2 duplexes. So I have 2 FHAs and duplexes. He has a triplex and a duplex with his FHA.
That's cool. I think as well, like I heard someone explain this, and I thought it was cool. I think it was David Green, the Bigger Pockets host. He was saying that, yeah, BRRRR is cool and it can really work. But if you're not able to do that, you can actually use an FHA loan, which is essentially you have almost 3.5% down. You're buying a $200,000 property with $7,000.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, if that's pretty much no money down, that's pretty much no money in the deal. So it's kind of the same thing. And I thought that was really interesting. So for anyone out there like who wants to get started and the burr of having to refinance and do all this work or whatever, just get an FHA loan if you can. And if you can get a duplex, triplex, fourplex, there's a good chance that you're living for next to free, right?
And I think people get lost in, like we talked about, all the content of doing a burr. I feel like a burr, just in my opinion, starting out, it would probably be good after you learn how to be a landlord, understanding that whole process, learning construction. But getting a turnkey, like we said, duplex, triplex under FHA, you usually those places are probably clean. So if you get one that's like turnkey, it may need some paint. You may put 3,000 down, maybe do a light renovation, just paint, updating it with paint, and then putting tenants in is like the most, to me, important thing of understanding how to collect rent, handle when they call you. How do you jive with that? Maybe they don't pay you for 5 days. Are you going to slap them with a late fee? Or are you too intimidated to? There's a lot of those little scenarios in the beginning that you're unsure of, and you have to get some clarity on just that basic stuff of being a landlord. And then I guess I would kind of like slowly migrate into the BRRRR stuff. But burring out of the gate, you could probably lose some serious money, if you're brand new, unless you're partnering with someone that has experience.
Yeah, you've got to learn those skills, right? Like you said, being a property manager, whether you want to call it that or not, is when you have tenants, that's what you are, right? Essentially, even if you don't have a company, you're just managing your own property. You have to learn that skill, and it is a skill, right? You have to train your tenants and figure out how to deal with them, especially if you're living in the same property, right? That can be real. How was that for you? What did you tell that? Did you go with the line that you're not the owner, or did you tell them that you how did you handle that initially?
Wait, like as far as when I was the landlord? Or?
Yeah, when you were living there, yeah. So you were living in the duplexes, right? So
I guess I probably shouldn't say this. When I had an FHA, I was able to. There was probably some workarounds that the person who wrote the loan was able to do. So I didn't technically live in the duplex, So there might have been a workaround that my lender put together that I told him. I was like, listen, I'm not going to live here. He's like, listen, it's fine. Just they may, I guess he told me they may stop by within the first 6 months, but he's like, just, he didn't really give me any details. He just said that it'll probably be okay, but I never actually lived in the duplex or any of those FHA homes, to be honest with you. So I'm not suggesting someone should do it, but that was just me being ignorant and just doing it the way I did it back then,
So then so the first few properties you had then, I guess, same kind of question, but you weren't living there, is how was property management for you then? Was it tough like then, or did you take to it naturally, do you think?
I would say I was very fortunate. I still have the tenants to this day that they were very good tenants that paid on time, because if my experience was bad with one tenant, I might have a different outlook, and that could change some people, their mentality towards like saying, oh, I don't want to be a landlord because of what scenario happened. So mine was positive. So I guess I got off to a good start by having two good tenants. I inherited one, and I was fortunate enough to get a pretty good tenant. But I look at it in hindsight, if I didn't do the protocol I do now by finding a tenant, because I could have easily slipped in a bad tenant based on the way I evaluated them, and that's why I'm fortunate, I'd say, because I didn't have a bad tenant. But then as we scaled, like I said, sometimes you go a little too quick, and you put people in just to put them in, and you don't do your homework, and it bites you in the butt. And I've had that scenario happen to me too. And but it teaches you. Sometimes I think even if you take losses, you learn immediately, like, I can't have this happen again. So I'm going to do it the right way, or I'm going to create a system, a mini system of making it work or pre-qualify.
Yeah, sometimes, unfortunately, it takes the mistake to have to learn, right? Because until that mistake and that painful experience, you just get away with it, so you don't think anything else, right? Like if you don't screen tenants properly, it takes that bad tenant for you to be like, all right, I need to have a proper screening process here, because I can't have that happen again. But until that happens, you're getting away with it, so you don't realize really what can go wrong. So I think that's
and to add to that, I think I think I actually look back and I feel very grateful, because there were so many times that we misstepped by not going into the details of how to properly screen a tenant, or the details of renovation costs, that we did lose a lot of money. I mean, I would say we either lost money by just purely losing it by hiring a bad contractor, or leaving too much money in our equity by misjudging a BRRRR strategy. So like when we did, I think a good little tip that I would tell to new investors is, when you're ever doing like a 75% loan to value, or say 80% loan to value, you're not purely getting back the 75% loan to value. And I made that mistake. I would automatically say, all right, this house is worth 100 grand. I'm getting back 75,000 from the bank. In reality, you're not getting back 75%. You're like, I would bank on, say, 75 grand. When I showed up to the closing table, you're usually getting like 65,000 of it. So it's really, when I do my numbers, I do 65 LTV in my mind, because with closing costs, fees and all those things, they're really taking like 10% out of that 75% LTV. So I misjudged that a lot of times. I was automatically assuming I'm getting 75,000 back, and it didn't happen that way.
That's a great tip, actually. Yeah, that you don't think about, right? There are closing costs, even when you're refinancing, right? There's costs to a refinance, because unfortunately refinance isn't free. And like you said, so for anyone listening who's looking to do a BRRRR, you suggest that they look to be all in for 65%.
Yeah, absolutely. So if someone tells you, like, if you're going to a lender and they're saying, yeah, we'll give you back 75% loan to value, I would think I'm getting back 65, but I'm taking out 75, because that like, say that $10,000 short, or if you're short 20,000 on a refi, that's essentially equity that's staying in the home, but you're not getting that at the closing table. So that could damage you sometimes. And that hurt me sometimes, where I'm like, you're happy, you're excited, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm short 20 grand. So believe me, I did that about 3 times, and you can't keep taking those type of hits. So you got to tighten your belt and learn quickly, or it's just not gonna work out, long term. So you got to get good at those numbers and things like that.
Yeah. And going back to what you were saying about tenants there, you guys have your own property management company, so you have it down now, right? For anyone starting out, what are some tips in terms of finding tenants and screening tenants that you would suggest?
The best tip I would suggest is there's 2 things, and we're always fine tuning this thing. So this is just my suggestion now, and I could change it probably in 2 months. We always ask to talk to their current landlord, absolutely, and their landlord before that. We run a background check, make sure their background is fine. We ask them for their past 2 months of pay stubs, and we call their current employer as well. And then we ask them several questions about, do they plan on keeping them there? How long have they worked there? What's their work ethic, et cetera. Then we call their current landlord, ask them a lot of detailed questions, like, because when you talk landlord to landlord, I think it's a little different. If they answer the phone and they're genuinely upset the person's leaving, you want that tenant. I've had it a couple of times where the landlord's like, wait, Dana is leaving? And I heard him like genuinely upset, and I was like, oh, she's probably a good tenant. So You can feel it out. If the landlord's so excited to like get them go, that could be a sign that maybe they're a bad tenant too, you know? So I guess talking to their current landlord is everything. What we've implemented too with our property management team is seeing their current rental property, asking them like, hey, can we just poke our head in and see your current residence and just do a walkthrough. And we haven't gotten pushback. They haven't been offended by it. It just lets you know like they're the type of condition that property's in, because your property is going to be in the same condition. I can promise you that. The reason why, one of my rentals got trashed, and the lady was a great paying tenant, great communication, everything. But when the way she left the property, I could not believe, based on her paying me on time and everything. And I'm like, the only way to prevent this from happening is maybe seeing her existing, the property she was currently in, and I would kind of see the cleanliness and how she took care of it. But it probably cost me about $7,000 just to get it back up and running, because I just thought that she was going to take care of the property, but that wasn't the case.
Yeah, that's such a good point, because you can do the 3 times income or 3.5 times income, whatever.
Yeah, 3.5 times. Yeah.
Right. Do the pay stubs, talk to the landlords, whatever. Right. You can do all that stuff, but you won't see inside the unit, right? Like you said, they could have all this stuff on paper, and they could be technically a good tenant by paying, but like you said, if they trash the unit and it costs you $7,000, that's a lot of money that you have to spend. And to some people, that might be enough to put them under, even.
You're right, because even the 7,000, you could maybe net $7,000 on one single family for the full year. They move out and you're at zero. So you're right. I mean, that could be a big decision just by screening the tenant. I think I heard one of your guests, I think Dan, said that you're like married to the tenant for a year. Dan Barrero said it. And I'm like, that makes perfect sense. You are in a relationship with them. So I want to make sure that I'm like talking to their parents and making sure that, that everything's good with my daughter, so, just checking in and making sure that they're like exactly what you think they are,
Yeah.
Because they're always going to sound like great and they're going to be beautiful tenants. But then when the honeymoon's over in the beginning, you're going to find out what kind of tenants they really are.
Yeah, every tenant puts their best foot forward to start off with, right? They're perfect when they talk to you.
Yep. Oh yeah,
nice
great.
people alive, and yeah, they can change real quick with that. And I think that's such a huge one is the screening process, right? Is finding the right tenant, because I think what happens is, especially people that start off with, and I've been here myself, is like you have that empty unit, right? You're eating the mortgage, you have holding costs as well, right? And you're like, oh, God, I need someone. I'm losing money here. I need to get someone, and you're so desperate. And you'll just almost put anyone in there. But the cost of putting that person in there, the wrong person in there, is way, way, way higher than anything else. Because especially if you're not in a tenant landlord, it could take you months. Landlord friendly state, it could take you months to get them out. Then the cost of the damages that they made, the lost rents that you make. So I think that screening process is huge for anyone who's starting out. Don't put your family in there. Don't put friends in there. Don't put someone you work in there just because they sound good, right? Screen, or if you do, make sure you screen them like anyone else. Have a stringent screening process, just like you said. The only problem I've heard as well is that, I don't know if you guys were able to overcome this, is that, like you said, you ask for pay stubs, you call up their work, but I've heard of people, you can get pay stubs online now, right? You can get fake pay stubs online. And I've even heard of people like getting their friends to pretend to be their boss as well. Have you guys run into anything crazy like that, or is that just...
Well, thank God, because I guess some of the companies that we've seen, we know they're reputable companies locally. So I haven't seen that yet, but I'm sure it's out there. Trust me, I don't put anything by anybody. It's very possible. Yeah.
But that's why it's also a great idea. I've never heard of that before, to go to their residence. Does that get challenging sometimes? What if the residence is 45 minutes away from where you guys are, your office is and what?
Fortunately, we haven't had that issue. Fortunately, yeah. So everything has been within like 20 to 30 minutes max of like going to the residency and seeing it. So it's worked out really well. It worked out really well. Something has escaped me that I wanted to share that I thought was a good thing with screening tenants. That'll probably come back to me later.
Okay. I was going to ask you when you guys speak to the landlords as well, what if they say they've never rented before, they've owned, or they lived with family or something? How do you guys, is there something that you can kind of work around that, figure something out there?
So that's a tough one. That is a tough one. And what we ask them is for like 2 other references, just to talk to them. If we really, really like this tenant, And also, I guess the job, especially with COVID now, is super important. So if we like them, they live, say, with their parents, but their boss talks super highly about them, and they're in healthcare, for example. Say they're a nurse. I mean, they're in a pretty good industry right now with COVID that they're not going to lose their job. So I guess I feel like if I look at what job they're in, what their boss says, and then what their other two references say, even though they have no other background of renting, that would kind of that would tip the scales on me making a decision of them renting. So I guess there's a couple variables as far as like their employment and how their boss really evaluates them and talks about that person.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that. What have you guys been doing differently with the screening process post pandemic?
So we actually have a lot of Section 8. I left that out. So we do a lot of Section 8 tenants, and we have a tremendous relationship with HUD locally, and HAP. It's all the same thing. So we do a lot of actually Section 8 tenants. So we actually visit their properties too, because, same thing, even if we're guaranteed getting rent from the government, we still want to make sure the property's intact and in good shape, because it doesn't matter. Then we're just going to redeploy it back into fixing the place up, like I mentioned earlier, But no, I like HUD. I really do like Section 8, and I think people should be open-minded towards it, because not only really the rent portion that you can get guaranteed during a crisis like now, but I like them as the middle party where they hold the tenant accountable, just like the landlord. So if you're not taking care of an issue and the tenant contacts HUD, their inspector will come out and make sure that it's handled, or they don't pay you. They basically hold the rent back. And that holds you accountable as a landlord. But also, if the tenants don't pay their small portion, you can contact them and they hold them accountable to pay you. So it's kind of good having that middle party involved with Section 8.
Yeah, that's interesting that you talk about Section 8, because it's so polarized. I feel like Section 8, right? It's like some people love it, some people say no, I would never ever do Section 8 because you get the wrong kind of tenants and they trash your place, right? But
yeah,
maybe you could give us a little bit more, deeper insight into what it's like managing Section 8, what the whole process looks like as well, maybe for people who don't understand.
Absolutely. So the whole process looks like you really don't have to get some crazy, I don't know. I've heard people ask me, like, do you have to get a license, like investors, or something special? No, you just really contact the local office. You have to get a certificate of occupancy, which is called a CO for short, from the township. So once you have a CO, you provide it to the HUD caseworker. So there's usually caseworkers that handle tenants. And I would contact the local HUD office, if it's in a county or in the state, and contact a caseworker and ask them if they have, like, say, a 3-bedroom or a 4-bedroom voucher. See what the voucher's for, and then ask for. They usually have a tenant expired list. Locally, every Wednesday they come out with a new list where you can call the tenants directly and ask them if if they're interested in renting your property because their voucher's about to expire. So that's a good way of picking up a quick tenant if you have a rental that's like up and running and ready to go. The next step would just be filling out basic, like, W-9 paperwork for Section 8, providing that to them, providing all the basic information that you're about your property. Then HUD comes out and they do a inspection. So there's usually a HUD inspector who works for that county. So if you do so many, you'll build a relationship with them. I would suggest, if you're a newbie, going out and meeting him and being friendly with the guy, because he's going to be very helpful. He's actually given me a lot of great tips on tweaking my rental properties, like taking out garbage disposals, don't provide dishwashers, don't provide fridges. So he's actually helped me come down on my cost of, like, things not to provide the tenant. So a lot of times, if you just spend the time of going out and meeting them, the inspectors give you, like, a wealth of information. So that's the step. So he'll come out, he'll inspect it, he'll let you know what repairs need to be made and what to get a HUD CO. And then after that, the tenant can move in, and then they draw up a lease between you and the government. And then it's kind of like clockwork. I mean, the rent coming in, and it's pretty turnkey. Another thing outside of HUD I've explored is the VA. So that's veterans. So there's a program too, because there's a shortage in housing for veterans, which if you just Google search it, you'll find that there's a lot of veterans that also get vouchers, where theirs is usually 100% rent. And this is something I've recently had for over the past 3 months, which is awesome. So same situation. They have a social worker, then they have an inspection, almost identical. They mirror each other, and they're more suited for like a 1 bedroom, maybe a 2 bedroom, because they're mostly veterans. So your profile on them, if you have say a duplex that's a 2 bedroom and one's a 1 bedroom, they're perfect to slide into a 1 bedroom place. And typically the rent you're collecting is great, and they're great guys. I mean, they're veterans, and they're really great tenants. They're really great tenants, though.
That's awesome.
Back to the stigma on HUD. I'm sorry, I wanted to add this. HUD tenants, mostly I have the best relationships, truthfully, with my Section 8 tenants. They're phenomenal. Mostly they're women. They're awesome. They come into my office. We joke around a lot. They're funny. But they're great. And they were, as long as you set the standard from the beginning when you present the lease, I think that's important. When you present the lease, you basically tell them the parameters of how to treat your property. They respect it. You just can't tell them after the fact. So I like setting the groundwork in the beginning with the lease, and then from there it's pretty easy.
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's about training your tenants, right?
Yes.
I always hear that you've got to, train your tenants as to how to behave, right? Because most of the times it's on us as landlords to train them, right? It's not necessarily that they're bad tenants, that we didn't, like you said, set expectations up front. What kind of, how do you do that? What are your expectations, and what do you kind of explain to them in terms of what they should expect from you guys?
So what we've been doing is our expectations is making sure the exterior and the interior is in the basically the way it was when they moved in, especially from the exterior initially, because the townships in New Jersey specifically, they will fine the landlord if the outside's not, like if they leave trash out before trash day. They don't maintain the grass in the yard. So I let them know, like, hey, the exterior has to be well maintained, and also the interior. So every 6 months, my handyman will go in. We'll just do a basic, walkthrough, make sure everything's up to standards. And we also have a service contract with our HVAC tech. So he comes in there, he changes the filters, he actually makes sure all the plumbing's tight, like under the sink, the shower heads, the faucets. So we take the precautions to make sure that the properties aren't being destroyed, but also we have an eyeball on everything. So we let them know, like, hey, if you're going to rent this property, these are the precautions that we take, but it's only going to benefit you. It's going to make sure that the wear and tear stays up to par and the cleanliness is there. So by us having these people that go in, we have little like checklists that they go in with, and they check it off. The tenant has to check it, like sign off on it too. So we have a good little process where the tenant has to sign it, and also the service tech. So we know that they were there and the tenant signed off on it. So that's some little thing that we add, and it works out pretty good.
Yeah, you guys have got some good systems. What do with Section 8? What does the government pay, and what does the tenant pay? Does it vary, or is it always pretty much the same?
It varies. There's a website. I think HUD. If you Google HUD voucher, if you click on it, they'll go state by state, zip code, and you can drill all the way down into it. So it tells you exactly what a studio or an efficiency to a 1 bedroom, 2, 3, 4 bedroom vouchers for. So what we do is, I know you listen to Bigger Pockets, you mentioned earlier, house hacking. So we do a lot of single family house hacks where if it's a 3 bedroom house, we'll house hack it into a 4 bedroom to get the 4 bedroom voucher, because the cash flow is amazing. So if it's a 2 bedroom, my favorite homes are 2 bedrooms, because we've house hacked a 2 bedroom right here in Woodbury, New Jersey, into a 4 bedroom, because the way the staircase, when you walk in the house, the staircase is in the center of the home. So when you walk upstairs in a lot of these Cape Cods, they're like a huge attic where you can stand up. It's 7 foot tall, but they were like unfinished. So I'm like, you know what? If we frame out the left side and the right side and put a door and a closet and there's a window on each side, you can make it a 4 bedroom. So this old 2 bedroom example was, there was 2 bedrooms downstairs. You walked upstairs, it was like just an open room. But by just having a little creativity, we were able to put a door on the right side. When you walk up the staircase, walk in, it's a bedroom. Door on the left side, you walk in, it's a bedroom. So we turned it into a 4 bedroom. So there's a lot of little cool ways you can just manipulate a house,
Yeah, that's awesome, and that's like having a little bit of the end in mind, right? You guys know with a 4-bedroom you're going to get a lot more.
Oh,
So then what you look for is properties, not just properties that are undervalued, but properties where you can do this, right? Where you can implement that strategy.
absolutely. Yeah. And I think a lot of people overlook 2 bedrooms, especially like their maybe search criteria is 3 bedrooms, maybe 4, but I like 2s because if it's a 2 bedroom with say 12 to 1,500 square feet, somehow, some way, we're going to try our best to sneak another bedroom in there, you know? Because if you can sneak one more bedroom in, it's like, you'll see if you go on the website, it's like night and day. You get an extra like 250 bump by the bedroom. So it's a big way of adding value to a property, almost like commercial, where just by adding a bedroom, you add value by doing it. And the return makes sense because it's a minimal investment for 1 bedroom to be created for the cash flow.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure during this time as well, you guys have been happy that you guys have got Section 8 as well, right? That guaranteed portion of the rent for a lot of these tenants, I'm sure has helped a lot.
Good sleep at night. I know. Yeah. If I had as many rentals without I would be scared, very, very scared, because it's tough in New Jersey because they really locked down a lot of gyms and restaurants, and it was tough on that industry. And there's people that, just in like there's a lot of diners in New Jersey. New Jersey has like 1 million diners if you've ever been here. So there's a lot of waiters and waitresses, and they work hard and they depend on tips. And if they didn't have that, I mean, that's tough. That's tough on those type of people. I think we may have one tenant that was a waitress, but they're, it's I couldn't. How can I ask someone to pay rent when they can't work? And that's what they're good at, and they genuinely make good money. So it's definitely a challenge for landlords, I'm sure, across the nation. With if you're not hedging your bets, if you have a big portfolio, I'm sure it's very, very challenging.
Yeah. I think after all this, or during all this, I think Section 8 housing has become more popular for investors. I've heard a number of people saying, hey, I never looked at Section 8 before, but now it seems really appealing, especially, we don't know what's going to happen over the next year, right? We're going to go into more lockdowns. Who knows what's going to happen? So I've heard a few people say that it's
really,
yeah. Just stay out of New Jersey, right? Stay away
from South Jersey. Yeah. No, but I actually would say between Section 8 and even exploring the VA with veterans, there's a sense of like giving back to, which is super nice, by housing a veteran. Very appreciative men or women. I've had men. And same thing, it's a voucher, and you're also helping them out. I mean, a lot of times they're homeless, unfortunately, and they're so appreciative. They're so excited to tell you about the new TV they got ordered and a couch, and it's awesome when you see it. It's really cool. So yeah.
Because there's more than the bottom line, right? There's more than just do this for a lot of us, right? If you can provide someone with a great person with a great place to live, right, and you can profit as well, that's just icing on the cake. Then that's really cool.
So true.
Well, you mentioned something earlier with contractors, right? I think you said you made mistakes to start off early on working with contractors, and you lost money. Well, I'm sure you've learned that skill since then, and it is a skill, right? Dealing with contractors. How have you developed? What's some of the mistakes you made early on, and how have you, what have you kind of changed, and how do you kind of like to work with contractors these days?
Oh boy. Okay. I guess that's a big question. You're right. Yeah. I guess it's weird. Real estate, and I'm sure you know this, Barry. Each kind of like segment is almost like its own little language. Being a landlord's like its own language. Being a property manager has a bunch of acronyms, terms, its own language. Dealing with banks to refinance, that's its own language. And then being in construction is its own language. So that's a big language to understand because there's various trades. So in the beginning, we used some Spanish contractors that were phenomenal. There was a son who spearheaded his father's business. So in the beginning, they kind of kept it a secret from us. So we weren't able to learn like how long it took to like say drywall a room, or how long it took to paint, or what the cost of doing it was. So they did, don't get me wrong, they did a great job, but the amount of money we paid was overwhelming for what we, so that was a little thing that we started realizing, like, hey, these guys are keeping this a secret for a reason. So they're not really giving us, we couldn't even communicate with them to ask them like, hey, what are you doing? Or ask basic questions. So I guess the first thing would be, is if you just, whatever contractor you hire, try to like fact find and ask them, what it takes to do a rough electrical, like when they're doing electric rough, like from the panel, what are they doing? How many copper wires? What kind of Siemens panel box are they using? So you can like Google it and look up the cost of the box. It's only like $99, and then you can kind of like say, all right, if it's the wire costs this, the box costs this, those little blue boxes cost this, you can kind of start calibrating like the material costs. And then you're like, all right, then how did he charge me $10,000 for this if the materials only cost like 1,500, So I would, I guess, almost be like an investigator of just the materials and understanding some little basic things, and then over time you'll start being able to understand like the whole piece of construction. But I guess hiring is another piece of understanding like their character. I would do the same thing like tenants. I would call their past 5 jobs. I wouldn't do 2. I would do their past 5 people that they've worked with. Ask for references, ask for time references. Like, when did you do this job? What time frame? So you have a ballpark. Like, this wasn't someone that they did a kitchen like 10 years ago. It was like in the past 3 months, Do they have tools? Do they come up with an actual work truck with tools? Do they look the part? Do they, I'm sure they'll probably speak the part if you're new. So, but if your instincts feel like something's wrong, it's probably wrong. I've been guilty of hiring a painter, no lie, a painter, to convince me into GCing a full job, which cost me an enormous amount of money, because he just basically was able to tell me like, Mario, like I can paint, but I can do other things. So I went off on a limb and really believing and trusting this guy, but it was my own fault for trusting him, and it cost me severely. But I guess I would make sure the first and foremost in the beginning is really going with a general contractor, checking his references and having him just really run the full job, soup to nuts, and then stop in if you have time to ask him questions, and he'll maybe tell you a little bit about each trade. The way I do flips and I do rentals are different. I have a GC that I use that just does my rental properties. And then if I do flips, I personally subcontract it all out, because I enjoy kind of the project management of it, the chaos and all that. But I have control of scheduling my subs in and making it done kind of like, I look at it like the Ford Model T, how I can get them done in line like a conveyor belt, and then have the car put together at the very end like a house in a timely manner. Because time is very much money in a flip. And but as you get experience, you'll learn how to where the subcontractors fit in the right time slot, and how you can effectively and efficiently get a flip done in like no time if you have the right subs that can get in, close up the walls, spackle, tape it, spackle, paint it, hang the fixtures, plumbing, and then flooring, kitchen's in, it's done. So there's a process to that too.
Yeah. Do you have a contract? Do you have any knowledge about contracting before you started, or is this everything that you've learned?
Zero.
Okay.
Just over the fire. You know what? I'm very obsessed. I mean, my whole family would tell you that. I'm very obsessive. Like when I play basketball, I get obsessive with details of things. So I really just ask a lot of questions. I just say, what are you doing here? I don't know how to do any of it, but I understand what they're doing, So I guess by just asking questions and understanding it, YouTubing it, researching things, then doubling back, it just helps me reinforce that I understand what's going on. So just being educated, they can't sweet talk you because what they're doing, and the price is bogus.
Yeah. I think that helps a lot, right? With contracting, the more experience you can kind of get under your belt, the more, like you said, then right? Hey, you're trying to charge me 10 grand for a $2,000 job? Then no, that's I know this, right? Because they will, unfortunately, right? It's just kind of the way it is.
And some of the biggest most contractors have a golden tongue. They can sweet talk anybody into anything, and it makes it sound pretty and it's right. And usually they're off on their timelines, and they underbid a job. So you have to prevent that by giving a scope of work. I think that's another big piece of going through a punch list of things that you want them to do for a price. But in the beginning, you may not know the punch list. Say you're doing a flip, you may know the punch list that you want done, but you can't project out what a home inspector sees, or if it's an FHA home buyer, which they typically are, what an FHA inspector is looking for. So if you have experience, I mean, that's why it's hard to teach experience. You have the experience of foreseeing, like, this is what a home inspector is going to see. This is what an FHA home inspector is going to see. And you can build that into the scope of work. Originally, you won't get marked up and beat up over time. That makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense. Like, because if you know what these people are going to look for, why would you do something different, right? You want to, like you said, include that in the initial work, and you're able to ask the contractors to do that work for you, because you're gonna have to do it anyway. So you might
exactly.
That's really smart, man.
So they're slick too, Barry, where they'll leave out things because they know, and they've been doing it for 20, 30 years. So they'll purposely leave it out. They're like, you know what? I'm not going to get Mario now, but in a month, I'm going to get him, you know?
He's going to have to get me back in to do some
work. So they're like, I'm going to make up for the difference I underbid later on the road. So it's like a constant like push-pull in the beginning of learning. I guess it's so hard to get all of it down. So I guess it's experience and learning the construction. But I know construction to me is like such a vital piece of learning how to evaluate homes. I mean, the house could sound like it's a good deal, you know, the appraised value, but the meat and potatoes is the middle part, which is the actual renovation and what it's going to cost, and you know, if it's going to get done on time. So that's a challenge. I feel like that's a challenge to get that right. You know?
Yeah, well, I hear it and I've felt it myself. The biggest challenge is finding those contractors that's going, because it can make or break a deal, right?
Right.
Make or break a deal, right? You can find a great deal, but if you have a crappy contractor that does crap work, costs you a lot of money, and then you maybe have to get someone else back in to refinish and redo that work, you could be at a loss at that property.
Yeah, I have a recent example where I bought a property. It was a great purchase price. I got a great purchase price. I had a fixed number with the contractor, and then, you know, sometimes some of these guys are, you know, they're coming from a rough lifestyle. So the guy just went off the face of the earth, and I had to piecemeal it and put it together. So that cost me probably about $30,000 more than anticipated just to get it done.
Wow.
And the profit margin essentially I was going to make, I believe I broke even on this flip, because the money I had to put on top to get it done and, you know, get it all squared away, stuff like that happens too. So that was unforeseen, but you know, those scenarios happen where you have a great deal and sometimes a contractor could screw the whole thing up for you. And then you got to hire essentially the same amount you gave them to someone else.
Do you find that you're able to work with contractors for a long time, or is it a case of a contract is good for a certain while and eventually a lot of them seem to go bad, or have you had long-term relationships with some of them?
So I've went through, I don't even know how many, I would say probably 30 plus contractors.
Wow.
But I've, knock on wood, I have one right now that's been with me for 2 years. His name's John Miller. He's phenomenal. And he's got like a heart of a lion, I'd say. This guy is like, he's fearless. He gets through things, and he's just great. But I'm lucky to have him. But for the most part, it's hard to find a go-to guy. But like you mentioned, most times I see they're like a one and done. They could do one job, but for some reason the second job, it's not done like the first one. So you always have to have a pulse on a contractor if you go to another job with them. Even with Johnny, to this day, I still hold him accountable. I mean, he's done a ton of homes, but I make sure I don't overpay him. You know, I have enough hold on him where he doesn't have a stranglehold on me, and I'm worried, you know. So I guess that's why I like subcontractors, because they get in, get out. Usually they work within a 1 week span and they can get it done. And I see the quality doesn't drop off much on a subcontractor, because they're not, I guess, psychologically married to a home for a long period of time. It's a 1 week deal. A GC is in there for, say, maybe 30 days. So I feel like they're losing their minds in that place, you know? So a lot of goofy stuff goes on when they're in a house that long. So like when I sub out a job, I have a tendency of feeling like I have pretty good success because they're in, out, the quality doesn't drop off, and it's a fixed price because I know I'm getting this for what they're providing, you know?
Interesting. Do you work with contracts for the contractors? Do you set up a contract, or is it just more of a word of mouth thing? How do you?
I should. I think that's the right way to do it. I'm more like, I guess, old school, where it's like a handshake and a good judgment call. And I feel like some of the guys that they meet me, they know they don't feel like I'm BSing them, so they feel like they're going to get paid. I think in New Jersey, maybe a lot of times guys, they're fearful of getting paid subcontractors. So I guess when they meet me, I usually try to bring them in the office because then they see that it's a little more serious than a typical investor. And then they know like, all right, the money's probably good here. And they want to do a good job because then they don't want to lose the business. If they're a smart subcontractor, you know, because you'll feed them business, you know, and even referrals, it goes a long way for them. And, you know, I go out on my way to try to refer them. If they're good, I make sure I let other people know, like, hey, use them because it helps me keep my costs down too. So it's a win for everybody if they're good and they, you know, do what they say they're going to do. But I don't have contracts. Maybe I should, but I don't do it.
No, I was wondering, yeah, because I think also it's kind of sometimes it can seem insulting to the contractors as well, right? I guess because you're trying to, it's a balance between building that relationship and that trust, and also saying like, screw you, I don't trust you at all. Here's the contract. You got to like, you know, so it's a balance. I think it's a tough one. Yeah, I don't have a contractor either. Luckily, I found a good contractor who hopefully stays good for a few more turns and a few more rehabs. So hopefully that works out. But
I think you're right. Like two's after two, I think you're probably going to have to like get a better pulse. Just make sure you're on top of them because it's weird. Like 2 to 3, they get squirrely. I've always felt like that with typical guys. Yeah, it's strange.
That's crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is.
But man, you're a wealth of knowledge, man. This has been so interesting. Like really, such a phenomenal insight. Like before I ask the last questions I ask every guest, is there anything else you want to share that maybe I didn't ask that you kind of thought of or that you can share with people? Like, because everything you've shared has been really, really good, man. I really enjoyed it.
No, I appreciate it, Barry. Thank you. Thanks. I've been enjoyed talking to you. Yeah. I guess really a lot of new investors, because I have guys that will either inbox me on Instagram or people that know who I am. They'll ask me questions about how to get started because I think they get lost so much in all the information out there. And I tell them, like, if you like somebody and you vibe with their message, just stick with that one particular person. Because I think when you bounce around with like 15 different guys that really know 15 different things, maybe you're crossing over into different niches. So what they're talking about may not be exactly what you're looking to do. So I guess I would say, if you're new, keep it simple. Like we talked about, maybe doing an FHA, learning how to be a landlord, and sticking to someone's message if you're really interested in BRRRR, and just following through with a couple of guys. But I wouldn't try to listen to 95 people because you're going to get confused and you're not going to know what to do. And I think that's what a lot of new people come to me and they ask me questions. And I always say, don't get lost in all the information because there's so much information that it's great, but it could hurt you too, I think, you know.
100%. There's so much noise out there and you can get so sidetracked and get caught up in the shiny object syndrome, right? Because it sounds amazing, right? When someone's successful, there's someone successful in every niche. And once you start listening to that person, they always are able to make it sound so simple. They made $1 million in 2 weeks. And like, you know, and maybe I'm not saying that they didn't, but that's not the norm, right? And you just got to, you can be successful in whatever you choose. Just pick something that for one suits you and your outcome, but also that you know, that resonates and that makes sense for you. So and just stick to it. I think that's great advice. Like I think we can all definitely.
Yeah, you're so right, Barry. Yep, absolutely. Yeah.
Cool. Well, now's the time I ask people wrestling related real estate questions.
Okay.
You know, the first one isn't. If you had to pick a name for yourself, a wrestling name for yourself, what would it be? You think?
Oof. So that that caught me off guard. So I get people. I have buddies that call me Motown Trout.
Okay.
I guess because I wore trout colored pants before and they were like tight. So I guess I would go with Motown Trout. That would be my wrestling name. Motown Trout.
you got some friends as character that are friends. Yeah, that's
man.
Motown Trout. I love that. And every wrestler has a special move, right? Something that they're good at. It's like kind of biggest strength because once they hit that move, the match is over. What do you think your special move in real estate is? What is your biggest strength?
Whew. I would say similar to like a figure 4 leg lock. Let's say something where if I'm really trying to stranglehold and get a deal, I will do everything possible to make sure I lock that deal up and make it work for me and the person involved. So I'm pretty relentless. If I really want a deal and I like it, I'm going to make sure I can nail it and get it done. You know.
Yeah. Love it. That's awesome. What's been the biggest body slam you've taken in your investing career?
Whew. Outside of that last flip, that sucked. That wasn't a big body slam. I would say in the beginning, when my brother and I started, it was probably spending about, we probably lost about $80,000 on a flip. Yeah, because it was just same problem with contractors, and then having to hire another one and miscalculating the numbers. We thought it was worth more than it was, and it really wasn't. And we lost about $80,000. But we were just lucky because we had a full-time job, so we were able to do it. But doing it now, that would be a major body slam if I had to take that right now. But that was earlier in our career. But we learned our lesson quickly that we couldn't do something like that happen like that again. Yeah.
And that was more down to calculating ARV, or a little bit of contract as well, a little bit of everything, I guess.
A little bit of everything. Yeah, it was miscalculating the purchase part. We overpaid a little bit, and the construction work, and then also the ARV. Really, just a poor job, inexperience of flipping. We didn't know what we were doing.
Yeah. Those are some rough lessons you have to learn.
Yeah, rough ones. Yeah.
So was there a moment that you were standing on the top rope getting ready to jump, but you were too scared? What was it, and how did you overcome it?
So I would say initially just getting into real estate. It was I was very scared, and I think I didn't know where to start. And I was actually scared to even put down $3,000 because I was, I guess, self-conscious. Like, would I be a great landlord, or would I be willing to do this? So, but I overcame it by just saying, you know what, screw it. I'm going to give it a chance. What is it? It's $3,000. If an FHA loan, let me give it a chance. So I think just jumping into real estate was fearful. And then when I did, you kind of start feeling like, oh, this is not as bad as you thought it was. You just have to kind of learn the rules and the different things that you got to do, to be a landlord.
Yeah, it's like most things, right? You just got to face your fears, right? Like, and a lot of times I think whatever those fears are, right? Even if it's the first deal or whatever, once you get past it, you realize like, wow, it was way worse up here than it ever was in reality. And I'm guilty of this even to this day, right? Of creating this situation in my head. And then when you do it, you're like, wait, really wasn't that bad, right? It really wasn't that bad. Yeah,
so true.
Yeah,
so true.
That's awesome. Absolutely. Hey, Mario, man, this has been phenomenal, man. I really enjoyed this, man. You got like so much information and so much stuff to share with people, right? That is freaking phenomenal. Your success is just so cool to see. Like the trajectory that you guys have gone on is just unbelievable, right? From start, you said you started real investing in what, 2017, 2018 in terms of buying the BRRRR, and now you're at what, 110 doors in 2.5, 3 years.
Yeah, just because we actually learned, like I said, I think it was really just learning a lot of those lessons, because within a 5-year window in 2015, I didn't know what I do now. So even in a short span, you can really scale, you can learn a lot. And that's what's exciting about real estate. You really can make a mark in a short period of time. And it's exciting. I love getting up every day, doing this full time. It's awesome. Meeting people like you. It's fun to just talk real estate. I could talk about it all day, all night. And I think that's how people are when they love like football or basketball coaches. They talk about it all. It's the same thing with us with real estate. We talk all night about it,
Yeah, it's true. Like that's one consistent thing you really find throughout real estate. People who love it, they just talk about it all the time, right? And it's cool. This is what I love about this, right? In my circle, there's not that many people here in Vegas, anyway, necessarily that love to talk about real estate. But I get to get on here, get to talk with someone like yourself. And
amazing.
It's love it. Like, we love it, right? It's just so cool. Yeah. So, man, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for making the time. But before we sign off, can you tell people like where they can hear more about you, reach out to you, see what you guys are up to?
Absolutely. Yeah. I post, little tips, like kind of like today about, different things with being a landlord or how to evaluate a deal on my Instagram page. It's my name, Mario Lancioni. And, I'm busy. I'd like to be a little more active, but it's hard when you're doing a million things. So I try to post things as frequently as possible that are beneficial. You can find me on my Instagram page. That's really the main piece where I'm at.
Okay. You guys have a company website or not yet?
We do. It's LancioniHoldings.com.
Cool. Awesome. Yes. Well, thank you so much, man. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, man. That time,
too, Barry.
that was a lot of fun. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you.